Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Valen Hark, your professor of Japanese language. And I'm here early in the morning again, just for you, people of the world. We're gonna take it nice and easy again with that smooth jazz. Now, your buddy Valen is working on the stream a little bit, trying to improve things, make things easier to see. You know, what's with that white background all the time, Valen? You think that's easy on people's eyes when you're trying to do like an hour-long class of Japanese? No, it's not. And that's why we're going to try out the mint chocolate chip, okay? The background is mint, and from here on out, the words that I'm going to teach you, starting today with this one, are the chocolate, baby. Because you know I love that chocolate. And, yeah, we're going to continue on with that list, which is still from Minna no Nihongo, right here. Last time we left off with hai and ie. Yes, no. And today we're going to start off with shitsure. And in your vocab list, you'll notice it says shitsure desu ga. Shitsure desu ga. And we will go over why it says that in a moment, but we're going to first learn this. Okay, so number one, this word right here, and I will put the furigana, the way you read these, the ruby, up top, because this is actually how you usually see the legend in hiragana when you're reading Japanese out in the wild. Any kind of books made for kids usually have it up top. So that's how we're going to do it from now on, okay? We're going to have longer words that are showing up. I don't want to put it over here on the left anymore. That was for babies, and now we're adults, okay? So here it is, shitsure, and this means rude. First and foremost, the word shitsure means rude, okay? But Valen, why did you write excuse me right there? The white's the sprinkles, by the way, okay? That's the color scheme I'm doing right now. Thank you. Why did I write excuse me right there? Because if you add that desu ga that shows up over there on your vocabulary list, now this is not separate words. This is a phrase. And by the way, quotation marks, no, don't use those in Japanese. What we use in Japanese are these things. These are Japanese quotation marks, these like little brackets. And when you start on the left, they show up on the top. And on the bottom right is where they show up to close it off. So that is Japanese quotation marks. But this now turns into a phrase that means excuse me. So a couple things to explain here first. I will show you how to write this, the stroke order and all that too. But first and foremost, I want to say this. We know des, right? Is, right? It's part of the is bucket. So you would have something. For example, wa shitsure desu. Something is rude, right? If you would literally translate that. But we don't need that stuff because this is a phrase. Like I said, you could just use it by itself. And so what is the ga? We have not gone over this yet. And I will cover this in detail later, but this means literally but. It can also be used as a grammar particle. Don't get confused yet. Just for now, basically what you're saying is kind of like being rude, but right? That's how we would literally translate it. But naturally translated would mean something like excuse me, okay? There is another word for this. What are you doing, Valen? How do you read that? Sumimasen. Sumimasen. This is also a very good way to say excuse me. And as a matter of fact, I would use this far often for excuse me than I would for shitsure. But it just so happens that Minna no Nihongo, for some reason, wants to introduce you to shitsure first, okay? The cases in which I would use shitsure are usually to say something is rude, right? So you might, for example, before you ask somebody how old they are. Now we've gone over that, right? Nansai? Nansai desu ka? You might say before that, you know, shitsure desu ga? It might be, sorry for being rude, you know. How old are you? You know, if somebody's uncomfortable about telling your age, or telling their age, that's you know, you might want to throw in a little phrase there to smooth the sails a little bit, you know what I'm saying? So, anyway, let's take a look at how we write this character. That piano is driving me nuts now, I gotta say. This is episode 20, by the way. We've been doing this for a long time. I'm gonna get a jazz radio or something going for next time. You do not need to listen to that piano 24/7. I am tired of it. Oh, don't. That's not what you wanted to type. Shitsurei, right? Space, and it will pop up if it doesn't. You know, keep looking. But this is really pretty much it for shitsurei. Just courtesy, impoliteness. Yeah, it means rude. Okay. And as an expression, you'll see here, it's even listed up as an expression, excuse me. If you turn it into a suru verb, it could mean to leave. Don't look at this so much. This is not commonly used. Anyway, first one right here. Pretty easy, fairly straightforward. We usually start top left to bottom right. So that's how this goes as well. Okay. Boom. And boom. And just like that. Let's see it in action. Alright. And you'll see that this stroke here should technically be longer than the top one, okay? And go like that. And then give it a little bit of that. There you go. This piece is a little long, but don't worry about it. It's fine. Now let's look at the second part. Day, right? Used by itself could be salute, bow, ceremony, thanks, remuneration, remuneration. Okay, don't ever use. It's not used as this. Okay, don't worry about it. Just we're learning one word here, and that's rude. Can be used as excuse me. So this one's easy too. And I will say, this is one of those vertical ones that has a left and a right. You see that here, right? This one on the left is commonly used in a lot of other kanji, so learning this one will help you out later, I guarantee it. Let's take a look. Very easy, very easy. Okay. And you'll see in this font, by the way, this is a difference between fonts. You'll see that the top part starts out as like a kind of vertical straight line. And if we look back at this, it's more like calligraphy, right? It's more horizontal. Either way is fine, and you can connect it or not connect it. It's basically like what kind of font you're trying to reproduce. I usually connect it like that, and then give it one of these, and give it one of those, and that, and boom, you're done. Just today, okay? And if you want to do that, you know, you could get sloppier, you could try to focus real hard to be perfect, and I guarantee you never will be, so stop it. That's not the kind of encouragement that a good professor should be giving. I apologize. You try your hardest to be perfect, and I'm sure it's going to work out for you. That is shitsure. So, let's take a look at the next one. What do we got? 初めまして。This is this kanji right here. 初めまして。And you'll notice this is she, and I've said this before, but it's been a while since I've gone over this point, but there's a lot of characters that, especially that end in I, like she, that when they're in a word like this, you would kind of soften the I part or almost get rid of it. I mean, it's technically there. You can technically hear it in native Japanese, but to a beginner in Japanese, they might feel like it's almost silent. So if we say this all like that, it would be Hajime mashite. So it almost sounds like I'm saying mash instead of mashi. Hajime mashite would sound really foreign. you would sound like you have an accent. It would be weird. Hajime mashite. Okay. Nice to meet you. Or how do you do? I can't ever read or hear this without feeling like I or the other person is being pompous. I just can't. How do you do? This seems very dated to me. I guess it depends on your dialect, but I don't think I would ever say this in real life. And that's kind of an interesting point for this word too, because this, you gotta be kind of careful with this. This is marketed as a beginner phrase, and it's even, let's think, it's in here, right? Yeah, it's right there. Hajime mashite. I'll go over this in a second. We already know this. It's kind of like in chapter 1 of this book, a lot of beginner Japanese classes talk about it too, like right away. And I want to tell you that honestly, I don't think you want to use this that much. It's kind of situational. It does mean nice to meet you, but there's a better phrase for that you could use in any situation and always sound nice and polite that would sound better than this one, because hajime mashite, I think, is more like, somebody's going to argue with me about this. They always do, but kind of like you foresee having a more personal relationship with the person, or like, I don't know, there's slight nuances here that don't exist in the other phrase that I'm going to teach you, which is yoroshiku onegai shimasu, and we'll get to that in a second. But for now, look, it's in the book. It's always taught in like beginner lessons, so learn it, know it. You can use it if you want. It's fine. So anyway, let's see how to write it, shall we? Hajime mashite. What does this say? How do you do? I am glad to meet you. This is interesting because it does not mean this, by the way. Jisho, you've been a bad boy, and you're not getting your gold star today. You could translate this far better in Japanese than hajime mashite. I guarantee you that. How do you do? Nice to meet you is really what it is. Hajime by itself, by the way, if we look that up, and you'll see it's got two different forms here: beginning, start, outset, opening, right? It's just, that's like literally what you're saying, literally. But not literally, more naturally, we're saying like, nice to meet you. Anyway, let's click it. First time, beginning. See, that's literally what this kanji means. And hey, you'll notice we've got this part from shitsure, right? The rei portion of shitsure. However, be careful, because with the rei portion of shitsure, there was no little splinter here in the rei's arm. What are you trying to say, Valen? Look at this. You see this here? Right now, the one that we're looking at has a little splinter there attached to the arm coming off. So we do want to be careful with that when we do hajime mashite. See that? Right there. Okay. Let's take a look. Same thing about the font, by the way. Oh, and this, they've gone nuts putting it way up there. I would put it more down in the middle of that arm there. You want to make it clear that you're actually writing it. This is not very clear. Also about the stroke order, it's not a huge deal, but before you do the arm, because remember when we did the last one today, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And this time we're doing 1, 2, 3, and then the splinter first. 4, 5, and then 6 and 7. Okay. Let's check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's make that a little better. 6, 7. Okay. And then the rest of it, you should know these, right? These are pretty straightforward hiragana that we've done a million times. Hajime mashite. Okay, nice to meet you. Hajime mashite. And that's about it for that one, so let us continue. Before we do, I do want to make one note right here. So we did Shitsurei desu ga, and then we went straight to Hajime mashite. And the reason is, I'm not going to show you this one because, I mean, I guess I should, but we kind of have gone over this a little bit. May I have your name? O namae wa. O namae wa. You know what? Let's just pop it in there just for old time's sake. Is that stroke? Yeah, I knew it. O namae wa. And then you know, you could put a question mark there if you really wanted to complete the entire sentence. You could do something like, you know, nan desu ka? Remember we went over nani last time along with nansai? O namae wa nan desu ka? But usually you don't need that part. You don't need to make a complete sentence with this because this is kind of another phrase, right? So you could just stop it right there. O namae wa? Can I have your name? Right? Simply put, it's really just what's your name? Okay. I figured we didn't really need to go too much over this because basically what you're doing is adding o before a namae, which we've already learned, and then starting the is bucket because you want them to finish it, right? O namae wa? And then the other person would be like, Valen this. Okay? And here is probably the first introduction to o that I think we've covered so far. And the reason we add this right here is it's added before a lot of nouns. There are some nouns where it's not added, but it basically makes it more polite. Okay, you're adding like some kind of almost like honorific pretext to whatever is coming after it. So you're talking about the other person's name, so you want to be polite about their name, right? What's your name? O namae wa? And that's what's going on there. So that's kind of why I skipped that one in the chocolate text. We just did it in the sprinkles. What can I say? That's I didn't plan too well, I guess. All right. And then we did hajime mashite. So what are we going to see next on the list? Now, the book teaches you this, and it says you should be able to read these hiragana. Douzo, douzo, yoroshiku, douzo, yoroshiku. Right? Listen, I'm not saying shi, yoroshiku. I'm saying yoroshiku. Right? Remember, that's more natural pronunciation. Douzo, yoroshiku. And then it has in parentheses here, and it shows you how to read that here too. Onegai shimasu. Onegai shimasu. Pleased to meet you. This is not a correct translation. Well, it is, but it's not the only translation. I always have to drill this into people. Japanese people have it in their head that there is no way to translate this into English, and that is completely false. As a result of that, a lot of people that learn from Japanese teachers also have it in their head that there's no translation for this. There absolutely is. And by the way, it's called localization. It's a little bit different from translation. It's basically putting... It's not... You don't always take word A equals word B. Word A in Japanese is word B in English. That's not how proper translation works. There are many different ways to translate a lot of different things, and you usually do not want to directly translate. And I'll tell you, if you directly translate this, it's going to sound really, really weird. Because it's basically saying, like, please. And then this is a form of a verb that we haven't gone over yet, but it's like saying, please, well, you know, subtext, treat me well. And I sometimes see it translated as that too. Please treat me well. We would never say that in natural English. So why would you translate it as that? All right, as a translator, it drives me nuts when I see amateur translations like that. always, in those cases, indirectly translate, or even better, localize, which is to say, make it sound natural in the target language. Okay, here's little translation tips here from Valen. But more importantly, needs to be said than that, is the way I'm going to teach you is forget about dozo for now. We don't need to know this right now. We'll go over that later. It's just unnecessary, and it's also, honestly, in a lot of situations where you're meeting somebody for the first time, you just don't need to use this part, okay? We're going to start here, and we're going to get rid of the parentheses, and we're going to make this all one phrase right here. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Okay, and that's exactly what I've done right there. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Okay? Nice to meet you, and this is what I just said is far better to use than hajime mashite, as nice to meet you. And what I was saying before is how this has many translations, because it depends on the context. So in English, whereas we would have different phrases for these different contexts, like for example, when we meet somebody for the first time, we might say in English, nice to meet you. But let's say we just finished a meeting at work and we're all wearing our suits and ties and we're all being a very business professional, okay? At the end of that meeting, you might stand up and the other people around you all might stand up and you might look to each other and you might say, I look forward to working together. And you might shake some hands, do some bowing, and then you might exit the building, all right, with your new account. You got your briefcase there. Guess what? In Japanese, this phrase can also be used just like that. Okay? It can be used in so many different situations. And basically, let me put it to you this way. When you are meeting somebody for the first time, you could say this, because remember, literally means like, please treat me well. Okay, I'm only telling you that so you understand why it becomes the English that it does, because we wouldn't say that in English. That's weird. So, nice to meet you, that's basically what we're saying in English when you meet somebody for the first time. Perfectly acceptable, very polite, very nice way to say that. So, I would not use hajime mashite for that, even though I am teaching it to you, because the book wants you to know it. However, like I just said, if you're finishing a meeting, you could also use it like this. So basically, it's like, whenever you're wrapping things up, okay, when you meet somebody for the first time, you could say it before you talk to them and or after. In any other situation, usually it's like if you want somebody to do something for you, or you've just finished a meeting together, or you're starting any kind of relationship, very tiny relationship where you're just asking somebody to fax you something. Yeah, we still use fax machines in Japan, okay? It's not a technological utopia like everybody thinks it is. Okay, don't get me started. We could also use it for starting big relationships. Like, you just met your boss for the first time, all right? Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Okay? Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. And one more little tip I'll tell you about this. We're going to learn this whole thing as one phrase, and it's used so much. Use this all the time. But what I also want to tell you is, by virtue of learning this phrase, you're also learning onegai shimasu. And you'll notice this is a verb, right? It uses shimasu, which is the polite form of, do you remember? Suru, right? Which, there are suru verbs. So this is a suru verb. All right, and what does it mean? What does the suru verb mean? Please. Okay. Let's take a look if it should be in here. If it's not, I'm gonna be very angry at you, Jisho. Onegai shimasu. Yep, there it is. Boom. Expression. Please. Humble. Humble. And you want to be humble at all times, don't you? Onegai shimasu. Okay? So you're also learning that. I'm not teaching it to you that way right now, but if you wanted to, in your head, make that mental note, later down the line when we see this again, that's what it means, okay? So, let's practice this, okay? Yoroshiku o. And then let's check out that stroke order, which we actually just saw. Onegai shimasu. Right there. Boom. Alright, now this is a long one, and it's one of those vertical left and right. It's got two parts, so keep that in mind when you're starting. We want it to end, in the end, to end up somewhat square as a whole. Alright, so let's take a look here. As usual, top left to bottom right. It does have a box with shelves in it. As a matter of fact, it has two. Okay. Ones with lots of strokes like this when you're starting out, give yourself a break. You probably will need to look at it multiple times, okay? So while you're doing that, you know, maybe the first time that you write it in your notebook in your rotation, you do it slow while either watching that animation or looking at each stroke here in the expanded view. That's perfectly fine. Maybe the second time you find it in your rotation again, you come back to it, maybe you still have to do that. That's fine too. No worries, okay? Yeah, eventually you're going to start to get the hang of it. And that's, you know, because you're repeating things. That's how that works, right? Okay, let's take a look. Yoroshiku o. It's a long one. But they tend to follow similar paths. You know, top left to bottom right. Onegai shi. Illustrator, please. Masu. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Okay. This is the one that you're really going to need to practice in your rotation. But I would put the whole phrase in the rotation. And by virtue of doing that, you're learning that this is all one word, because if you only put this kanji in your rotation, you're not practicing it properly, okay? Look, it's giving you further practice with each one of these hiragana as well, so it's a double whammy. It's good for you. It's good to work out the muscle memory, okay? Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. Very useful, very versatile, used in like any situation. After you're done talking to somebody, you want to be professional or very polite, you can throw this in there and you will sound like a badass, okay? Let me just say that. Alright, let's round it out with one more phrase today, and this phrase is not, for some reason, it's not on the list. I mean, is it? I don't see it. No, it's not. We're going to start going over this stuff next time. And we're actually going to practice this next time as well. And then we're going to be pretty much done with the vocab here. So we're wrapping it up pretty quick here. But I want to show you this because this is actually used in Chapter 1. I'm not sure why Mr. Denisowski, is that his name, who wrote the list there, did not include it. But look, it's no big deal. It's an easy one. Let's sound it out here. O ha yo u go za imasu. Right? And if we actually said this properly at full speed here, we would say Ohayou gozaimasu. Ohayou gozaimasu. TM Extremes, thank you for following the channel. Welcome, welcome. Come on in, learn Japanese with the chocolate mint we've got going on here. So this just means good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. And actually, there's a few things to say here. As always, when I explain an expression, a phrase. Number one is there are two parts here. And I want to tell you exactly what's going on. Number one, Ohayou literally by itself can be used as good morning. Good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. This part here is not necessary. You can say good morning without it. However, if you throw this on there, you're just being more polite. TMX Stream says, so you are teaching. Yes, I am teaching Japanese. So if we add that it is more polite, it's not entirely necessary. So the way I like to usually teach this is if you just say ohayo, it's more just like saying morning, right? Just saying morning to somebody is not impolite. But if you wanted to just be a little bit more formal or a little bit more polite in English, you might want to say the full thing, good morning. Now, does gozaimasu literally mean good? No. But the levels of nuance there are different in that sense. Team Extreme says, I know a bit of Japanese. Excellent. Then hopefully you know what's going on here. These are fairly simple. We are still teaching beginner level here. Ohayo gozaimasu, good morning. So that is the phrase there. It is not on the vocabulary list, but we are adding it to the rotation. Please add this to your rotation. Think in your head, good morning when you do it, and practice it, please. All right? So with that ends today's vocabulary portion. We are almost done with it. And we are going to move on and continue with that grammar. Okay. Last time on grammar, what did we go over? A bunch of different stuff. And we're going to continue on. Basically, if you're following along with Minna no Nihongo, if you're following along with this book, before chapter 1, there are a few pages that go over specific grammar examples and a few conversational examples, and I am doing my own version of that, so you have double the study material if you're following the book and me. If you're not following the book, then you can just use this and you'll be fine. So today's grammar, we're going to start with this. We're going to continue on here. Anata wa John Taylor desu ka? So we know John Taylor, the guy from last time, Mr. Taylor. And I gotta be honest, you probably actually also want sang in here. I should have read that. Anata wa John Taylor sang desu ka? You don't want to be rude here. What are we saying here? Well, you should know all these vocab words if you've been following up to this point. We're saying you, right here. You. Opening the is bucket, we see we have wa and des. John Taylor. And we also know it's a question because we have ka. You, John Taylor? Question? Are you John Taylor? Alright, are you Mr. John Taylor? Team Extreme says, I'm super into Japanese stuff, so I kind of just been learning passively from a lot of listening and looking up words. Yeah, you can totally do that. Eventually, you can start to absorb things. A lot of people also say, like, I learned Japanese from anime and manga. Definitely be careful with that. I have said that in the past. Not that you do that, TXM stream. Sorry, I've been saying your name wrong this whole time. Not that you've been doing that, but I always tell people to be very careful with anime and stuff, because you're going to start, like if you learned English watching Game of Thrones, you're not going to sound natural. I guarantee it. All right, let's continue on here. So you're saying, are you John Smith? Or John Taylor, excuse me, not Smith. And then we learned last time, yes and no. Hai. Watashi wa John Taylor desu. So what are we saying? Yes, I open the is bucket and put in John Taylor. I am, because remember it's is, am, are bucket technically, because there's no distinction in Japanese. Yes, I am John Taylor. Boom. Okay, and so we ask questions, we answer questions. TXM streams, yeah, I don't really watch anime, but I'm super into Japanese music and often watch TV and interviews only in Japanese. I literally only listen to Japanese music. Yeah, that's much better than, for learning the language, I think it's much better than anime, for example. Everybody's gonna hate me on the internet for saying that, but it's, what do you want me to say? It's true. Watching like actual interviews and stuff is good. It's natural Japanese. That's a good way to do it. All right, number 2. By the way, this is using the same grammar constructions as the book, so you can look at the book too, and it'll use, slightly different words and stuff. than what I'm using for copyright purposes. I don't want to mess with the book. So this time we've got Taylor-san. We know John Taylor is the guy, right? So this is Mr. Taylor is bucket. Question. Blah. And what's this word? We know it. We've done it. We've practiced it up until this point. Sensei. Teacher. So what are we doing here? We are asking a question, right? Mr. Taylor is teacher. All right. And naturally put, is Mr. Taylor... Is Mr. Taylor a teacher? Right? So this is somewhat review from last time. Should start hopefully understanding this if you've been following from last time. Yes, that is the kanji you got there. TXM streams, you got it. And what is the answer in this case? As the example, first of all, we see that the person who's answering this said iie, right? Remember the pronunciation here. We've got two e characters, right? It's not ie, which means house. It's iie. No. And by the way, this is the Japanese comma. It's more like this, whereas the English comma is more like that, right? Very, very slight difference. TXM Stream says, no, I am not a teacher, but I don't get the last bit. Kanji don't know. Okay, that's fine. So, and yes, you are correct. Yeah, and we are using watashi, so it is I. Mr. Taylor, is Mr. Taylor a teacher? So before we said, is Mr. Taylor a teacher? And now that we see the answer here is using watashi, I would actually correct the last translation to say, not Mr. Taylor, I would say, are you a teacher? And the reason being is, in Japanese, there's no distinction when you're saying, is someone or are you? The grammatical construction is still the same. You're using the person's name and is a teacher or are a teacher. So how would you know when to use is Mr. Taylor or are you? Obviously, are you talking directly to the person or are you talking to somebody else about them, right? Context is king in Japanese. So in this case, the person is saying to Mr. Taylor, are you a teacher? And Mr. Taylor is saying, iie, no, watashi wa sensei jarimasen. I am not jarimasen. We also learned dewa arimasen last time. You could use either one here. You don't have to say jarimasen. You could also use janai, which is less formal, I guess. No, I am not a teacher. And what is this? This has been in the vocab list. Ginko-in. Bank. Ginko, bank, and in, bank employee, or bank clerk. It depends on what you want to say. So, ginko-in desu. All right. And you'll notice he didn't say watashi wa. Oh, that's very messy. Excuse me. Watashi wa ginko-in desu. He could have said that. That would be a full, complete sentence, grammatically correct. But it's not necessary. Like I told you, context. We already know we're talking about ourselves here. We already know he's talking about himself, so he doesn't need to say that. He only needs to close the sentence with desu. Ginko-in desu. So what is he saying? No, I'm not a teacher, period. Remember the Japanese period is a little circle. I'm, or I am, you could use either one in English. Bank employee. Okay, that's it. So this has all been review up till now. Different example here. Oh, excuse me. TXM Stream says you could just say, if you were in a conversation with just them, just say sensei desu ka? Yeah, you could. It kind of depends on context. I think it would be slightly unclear. If you started out a conversation with that, probably unclear. But if you're already talking about like the person's job or something, or you know that you're like probing them or something, you could ask that. Yeah, you could. I think it's more polite to use the person's name though, for sure. So that is 2 reviews there. Let's keep going. What do we got here? We got a new. We already know it's a name because we got san next to it, and it's got 3 katakana there. So let's sound it out. You know the katakana. Yang. Young. Now, you might think this is young. And I'm going to tell you it's actually, depending on your accent in English, you might say yang for the Chinese, like the Chinese name, Mr. Yang. It's actually closer to yang, okay? And in Japanese, you would say just that, yang-san, all right? In the book, they use somebody who is of Chinese descent as another character in these examples, so I've thrown in just that right here. What are we asking? Yang-san wa, opening the is bucket with a question. So we already know off the bat, we're asking if Mr., and we don't know if it's a Mr. or Mrs. without context. I'm going to tell you it's Mr. We're asking, is Mr. Young something, right? So all we need to know here is the vocab word. We've gone over this before. If you need to reference back, for those of you who've been following along, feel free to do so. It should be in your rotation. This is kenkyusha, right? Kenkyusha is researcher. Okay, remember kenkyu by itself, if you added suru to the end of it, would turn it into a verb. It is a suru verb. It would be research, to research, right? And when you add sha to the end of it, you're like adding the part of researcher, the person who does the thing, right? Researcher. So what are we asking? Is Mr. Young a researcher? Is Mr. Young a researcher? That's what we're asking. Clear as day, right here. And the little sprinkles there, you probably caught on by now, but I'm just making it clear what is the grammar. What is the grammar that we've been going over. That's why that's white instead of chocolate. And so the answer in this example is iie, comma. So we already know off the bat, we're starting off here. No, comma. Yang-san wa. So we're not talking to Mr. Young, we're talking to somebody else about Mr. Young here. We know that much, right? Because otherwise the answer would be watashi wa, I am. So we know we're talking about him to somebody else. Mr. Young is, all right, we've got a not bucket here, is not. And what is it? Wa and de wa arimasen. Just like I told you, we could use ja or de wa. Either one's fine. This one's just a little bit more formal, a little bit more polite, but it doesn't make a huge difference. We could have very well said ja arimasen here as well. So Mr. Young is not, same vocab word as right here, right? Kenkyusha, researcher. Mr. Young is not a researcher. Boom. Can you even read that? I need to make the stroke probably thinner. TXM Stream says, 私は日本の音楽が好き。ロックとメタルが好きです。Very good. TXM says, I like, Japanese music. I like rock and metal. Yes. We've gone over it a little bit. We're going to go over the actual grammatical construction for ski, to like, a little bit later, but we actually have gone over that, so that does work for the rest of you following here as well. So de wa and ja arimasen are interchangeable. Yes, they are. Yes, correct. And like I said before, you could very well use ja nai for casual speech as well. Nai, by the way, just as an aside here, if you're following along in your notebook, you don't need to write this down right now, but nai, nai is the casual form of arimasen. They both mean literally not. It's like a negative. Something does not exist, don't have, or just not. Yeah. So the book starts out, if you're following the book wants you to learn the very polite stuff first. So I guess that makes sense, because if you're starting Japanese and you want to start speaking, you probably always want to be polite just in case, because you don't know who you're talking to or in what context just yet. TXM Stream says, I hear that all the time, ski janai or anything like that. Yeah, ski janai would be, well, we know ski means like, right? Ski janai means don't like. It's that simple, yeah. Yes, that is the case. All right, so that is that. No, Mr. Young is not a researcher, okay? Boom, boom. And here's the last one for this slide. Ano hito. Okay. Ano hito, we know this. We've gone over this so many times. Ano, we've got kono, sono, ano. Ano is that, parentheses, you don't actually say this part. Way over there. way over somewhere else. That way over somewhere else. There's a difference between that close to you or me and that way over there. So, ano hito, that person. You know what? Can I make this stroke a little bit smaller so it's easier to see here? All right. That person, and we've got the is bucket question here. This is an easy construction here. That person is dare. We learned dare, I think, two times ago, 3 classes ago, maybe. Is who? That person is who? The TXM Stream says, who is the person? Yes, but who is that person? That person way over there. So if I just read this sentence without any other context, I would assume somebody is talking to somebody else about a third person, like way far away, or not. It could be across the room, but the point is they're not near the speaker. Yeah, that person is who. So naturally put in English, who is that person? Who is that person? あの人は誰ですか? Okay. Glad I can read all this part. Yeah, you're doing pretty well. Good. And the answer is あの人は. So we know off the bat that the person who's answering is saying that person is. And what's this? There's a word that we have not covered yet, but we see san is attached to it, and it's written in katakana, so we can automatically assume that it's a name. And when you sound it out, you'll probably figure out what it is. Smith-san. That person is Mr. Smith. Okay, that person is Mr. Smith. And here's a quick point here. Do we need in the answer to say あの人は? No, we do not. We could have just said, so this person A says あの人は誰ですか? Person B could just say スミスさんです. And that would still equal this English. That person is Mr. Smith, because we cannot do that in English with that person. We could say, if somebody says in English, who's that person? You could say Mr. Smith. You could just say that. And it works the same in Japanese. あの人は誰ですか? Smith-san desu. Who's that person? Mr. Smith. Or you could just leave it as the translation. That person is Mr. Smith. But yes, like I just said, literally just Mr. Smith. Either way is fine. TXM Stream says that person is Smith-san. Yeah, Mr. Smith. And you wouldn't know that unless I told you. I just told you it's Mr. Unless you had like a picture or you already knew the person. He is a teacher in London. Yes, very close to what the next sentence says. So let's sound this out here. London. London. London, you got that part correct. London. And what is this? We've gone over this in my class. Daigaku. London Daigaku. London University. No, we know is the possessive particle. So we have des here by itself as well. Is no something des? A type of is bucket or are bucket? No. In this case, this could trip you up if you've been following the pattern that's going along the whole time with these like is buckets here where you put something inside the bucket. This is just the possessive particle like we've gone over. It just means something belongs to something else. So whatever follows no belongs to whatever is before it. So kind of like the word of. So did I mean to say professor? Lol. Yeah, you could say professor, sure. So after, and what TXM here is talking about is sensei, right? We know this usually means teacher. So as a translator, there is actually another word that you could use for professor, but yeah, sensei could also be used for professor. As a translator, you have to take into consideration the context. It's very important. So in this case, would I say, for example, let's take a look at this. あの人は誰ですか? Who is that person? あの人はスミスさんです. That's Mr. Smith. ロンドン大学の先生です. We would number one add in English, he is or he's. This does not exist here in the Japanese sense. Even though we could say it. We could say karewa, but I haven't taught you that yet. It's not necessary in the Japanese sense, but just know that we would translate that as that into English. He's a... There's a few different ways you could construct this in English now, and any one of them are acceptable, really. TXM Stream says, he is a teacher at London University. That is one very acceptable translation. He's a teacher at London University. Yep, that could work. You could also say he is a... Let me leave that there. He is a professor at London University. Now, we've learned sensei means teacher, but here in the context of university, you could also use it as professor, sure. That would be fine. Would you say... So if we literally translated this, literal, direct translation, he is a teacher of London University. So that would be unnatural in English, somewhat. So I would not do that. I would do it more like what you've said here. Yes, this is a good way to translate it. Okay. So this has made use of a lot, most of the grammar that we've learned up until this point. Do we have time today for a little bit more, I wonder? Yeah, we can do this. All right. And this is gonna finish off the grammar pages, the grammar introduction before chapter 1 if you're following along in Minna no Nihongo. So let's take a look here. Now, this time, we don't have sang, we have chang. So number one, we know it's a name, and we know it's probably either somebody that we're closer with or somebody that's younger than us, significantly younger. It doesn't have to be significantly younger if you have a good relationship with the person. They could still be the same age as you. Would you use this for somebody older than you? No, don't do that. That should all be a review. That's the way chang works. The same as kun for specifically for boys. Chang can be used for boys and girls. Don't forget. And what is this in katakana? We have Emma. So if you didn't know how this person spells their name in English, you'd make an educated guess. In this case, we're going to spell it like this. Emma-chan, right? We don't need chan in English because we don't use chan in English. And it makes you sound like a weeb. And we don't want to sound like that, so we're not going to use this in English, okay? We're just going to say Emma, because that's how we would naturally say it in English, right? So anyway, Emma-chan wa, open the is bucket, and we notice it's using a question, right? So we already know we're asking something about Emma-chan. Emma-chan wa, what's this we remember last time? Nani and sai, but together you wouldn't say nani sai, you would say nan sai. How old? TXM Stream says, I see nani kanji but don't know the other symbol. Yep, this is it. Nan sai. How old? Okay, so what are we literally asking here? Emma-chan is how old? Let's make that into natural English. Right? How old is Emma? Okay. I know the words, but not the kanji. No problem. Now, you can study this kanji. How old is Emma? Okay, and now we're going to pull out the numbers. We went over numbers, I think, two or three times ago. And how would we construct this? Number one, let's construct the number. In order to say 11, I am 11 years old. 11歳です. Yes, so you're very close. You're very close. Whenever we want to construct numbers, number one, in order to get to 11, you do need, like you just said, to combine 10 and 1. So 10 is 10 and 1 is 1. We know that. However, when you put these two together, you do not say 11. Well, you do, but not not for an age. Because the next character coming after that is sai. To make it sound natural in Japanese, you would say 11. 11歳, right? 11 would be the number, but in order to combine it into an age, you say 11歳. Okay. Oh, is there a special counting system for age? I don't know that well. Yeah, I wouldn't expect, if you're not used to ages or anything, it's counterintuitive, right? Like, why would they do that? Really, the reason, and there's a few different numbers that do that, and they don't only do it for age, they do it for a bunch of different things, like different ways of counting different things. Anyway, the point is, it just makes the sentence flow better. If you're used to Japanese, if you're a native speaker or if you're fluent, it starts to make sense to you why it's done that way, because otherwise it's like making you're having to stop your pronunciations and start them up. We do that with stuff in English too, like want to. Instead of want to, we'll say wanna, because it just flows better off the tongue, right? And that's the same reason why a lot of times in Japanese, a lot of words are like that. Yeah, I know it's weird. Hitotsu, futatsu, or whatever. Yeah, that would be for counting specific objects of things. Hitotsu. And even for that, there's a lot of different ones. Like objects shaped like a pole have their own counters. Objects that are cars or machines have their own counters. There's a whole bunch of stuff. We will get into that much later, though. So for now, Emma-chan wa nansai desu ka? How old is Emma? And we're not sure if we're talking directly to Emma or about her here. So if you wanted to translate this here, if you wanted to throw in I am, because you think that Emma is the one answering the question, you could. It's not clear, though. We would need more context to definitely make this clear. So if for example, if I got a translation job that just had this, I would probably, if I don't want to ask them, because I don't want to be bothered, I would just write 11, or you could write 11 years old. Because whether it's Emma answering this herself or somebody else asking or answering on behalf of her, this would work in either case, right? If you wanted to know for sure, if I was a translator, I would actually have to clarify that with whoever sent the translation. I would say, well, who's actually answering this, because I need that information to properly translate this into English. In this case, I don't really. I could just say 11, but there's a lot of cases when I'm translating that I actually have to clarify with whoever sent the translation. Yeah, you kind of don't know. Exactly. Yeah. So that is asking the age and answering the age. Okay, a little review there. What else we got? Okay, let's go. Anata no. And actually, this no should be white as well, because this is a grammar here. I gotta fix that later. Anata no sensei wa 31歳ですか? Notice I said 31 instead of 31, right? For 31. So what are we asking here? Number one, we see we're using no, possessive particle. Anata no sensei. All right. You, possessive particle, teacher. So what do we do whenever we see the possessive particle? Whatever's after it belongs to whatever's before it. So what are we saying? Your teacher. And we see we've got the is bucket with a question. So we're asking, is your teacher something? So what is this? Is your teacher 31? You could also say 31 years old. Either translation is acceptable. Is your teacher 31 years old? Exactly. And let's look at the answer here. So we see this person's answering with a name, and they've put sensei after it. And this person's saying Smith. That's the person we saw before, Mr. Smith. Smith sensei? Question mark. So they're asking like, Mr. Smith? So whoever's answering is like, you mean Mr. Smith? Because they're not sure who the person's talking about. Maybe this person has like 5 different teachers, and they're asking, oh, you mean Mr. Smith, the guy I just came from his classroom, right? And TXM Stream says, Mr. Smith? No, he's 32. Exactly, that is what's being said here. Mr. Smith. And so why are we... You'll notice here I used Mr., and you'll also notice that we didn't use san here. We used sensei. Because in English, when we're referring to a teacher, we would, for example, if this was Mr. Smith, we would say Mr. Smith. We wouldn't say Smith teacher. That would be very weird in English. However, in Japanese, instead of san, you would use sensei, but it works just like san works grammatically. Okay? In Japanese, you're just making it clear that you're talking about the teacher, but when you use it with somebody's name plus sensei, you're saying Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or whatever. You're just adding an honorific to their name as a teacher. Okay, so that's why that says that. And like you just said, what are we actually saying here? Mr. Smith? Iie. No, comma. 32歳です. 32, 32. No, he's 32, or 32 years old. Either way. Okay, and we added the he's. You do not see the word he here, which in Japanese would be kare. And then you would need, I always want to say ha because that's what it technically is in Japanese, but kare wa, we don't see that here. You could add that there, but I haven't taught that yet, so we're not doing that. Mr. Smith, no, he's 32 years old. TXM Stream says, one thing I found confusing is the whole mang. Counting in 10,000s is weird. Yes, we are going to get there much later, but basically what TXM is talking about here is in Japanese there's actually a whole kanji just for 10,000, which would be in this case pronounced mang, right? So if we said ichi mang, it actually is 10,000. It's, yeah. This is useful when we start talking about money and stuff, because there's like 10,000 notes, which is which would be equivalent to $100 approximately, give or take. Depends on the exchange rate, USD. Okay, so that is Mr. Smith's example there for the age. What else we got? Okay, we got another question here. Watashi. Well, we already know we're talking about I. TXM Street says, I've ordered plenty of things from Japan. Yes, you will start to see numbers there if you do any kind of ordering from Japan. In Japanese especially, of course. So, watashi wa, we see we have I. Nansai. How old? And we see also we have the question is bucket. So we're saying I am how old? How old am I? We're asking here, how old am I? Is this a question you would ask? Probably not. TXM Stream says, that's a weird question. It is a weird question, but why am I showing you this? Because it's still grammatically correct and possible to say. You could substitute these words for anything in the is bucket. How old am I? And what would somebody say to that in Japanese? Probably something like, huh? お前はバカなんじゃないか。自分の年齢を知らないなんてふざけるな、ほう。Okay. We haven't gone over any of this, and we're not going to for a very long time. All I want you to know is that you could say this, and it would be very weird. TXM says, わかんない。Exactly. Alright, look. Now we're just screwing around. I've gotten more prepared. I don't want to overload, though. We are already pretty much, we're over an hour here now. I like to keep these classes at least around, around an hour. I don't want to go too much. But this is the start of Chapter 1. We will continue on. We'll probably finish up all the grammatical introductions next time and work on the remaining vocab for Chapter 1. And then we'll start doing practice. I'm going to give you practice material. You can follow along in your notebook if you're maintaining one of those. And it's going to be super fun. Okay, we're going to have a great old time. I'm going to stop playing this one piano track. I'm going to find a better radio. We're going to up the beats here. And that's what we're going to do. TXM Stream says, I'm going to check out your YouTube. Much appreciated, TXM. And thank you for stopping by today. It's been a pleasure to have you. Feel free to come back anytime you like, pal. I usually do these streams on Wednesday mornings in Japan, which is right now, around this time. Sometimes I do it later in the day to give people in other parts of the world that are following along a chance to come on live and ask questions. So, heart right back at you, buddy. And I also want to say thank you to a few followers we had here. Squid Tortellini, Steruyuki, Shimmer Solstice, Streamin' Sean, Boomer 1994, thanks Boomer, CSOS 95, Kasos, CSOS 95, thank you very much, and TXM Streams, of course, thank you very much for following as well. Igirisujin desu. TXM Stream says, I'm from England. Excellent. What time is it in England right now? It is... I actually don't remember. I think it's late in the evening for you, isn't it? I assume. Yes, thank you to all the new followers here today. TXM says midnight. Yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting. Thank you for stopping by. Got the late night jazz vibes. But anyway, yeah, I'm just rambling at this point. Thank you all for stopping by. We're gonna continue on next time, as always. I will get this posted up onto YouTube post haste. Remember to keep following along with your rotation. Throw in the vocab, throw in the old vocab as you're studying the new ones. Don't ever just write the same word 100 times. Keep mixing in the old stuff with the new stuff, and it'll go much better for you, I promise. So with that said, thank you very much. TXM says, mata ne. Right back at you, TXM. I'll see you later. Ganbarimasu. Yes, exactly. Do your best. And with that said, guys, I will see you next time. So, have a good one. And take care.